The cake hit hard, not a playful smear, not a tap. The whole platter slammed into my face, cream fruit frosting everything. My knees buckled against the table, my elbow knocked over a glass. Someone gasped, then laughter, hesitant. Too quick. "She's fine," Tessa said, grinning, licking icing off her thumb. "Happy birthday, right?" I stood still. My hair clung to my cheeks, my lips stuck together with sweet. My son's voice cut through the room. "Relax, Mom. It's just a joke." I didn't speak. I didn't move. I found the table's edge, gripped it, and waited for the tremor in my hands to slow. A napkin brushed my palm. I took it, wiped the corner of my mouth. Red, barely. A small cut, maybe, from the edge of the tray. I looked at Adrian. He was already looking away, already. Walking back toward the drinks, already pretending none of it happened. Tessa laughed again, louder this time, nudging her friend. She always gets dramatic. I wiped the rest of the frosting from my lashes. My breath caught, once then steadied. The room moved on, but I stayed still. I clasped my hands behind my back so they wouldn't see the tremble. Only one guest held my gaze, Mrs. Halden from next door. She stood in the archway, her plate untouched. Her eyes didn't flinch. She looked like someone who'd seen this before. I stepped away. Not fast. Not in anger, just quiet. Through the kitchen, down the hall. Past the coats. The mirror was at the end, just past the bathroom. I needed to see it for myself. The bruise forming the way the frosting clung to the blood, the way I looked at 67 when love turned its back and called it comedy. I didn't shut the door. I didn't lock it. I just walked in, turned the knob on the sink, and reached for the hand towel. There was still laughter in the living room, and my name spoken like a joke punchline. I turned the faucet on full. Water splashed hard. I grabbed a towel, soaked it, pressed it to my cheek. The sting told me exactly where the bruise would bloom, just under the bone where the metal tray must have hit. Behind the door, footsteps passed. Laughter followed. Her voice. Too loud. "She's always like that," Tessa said, acting wounded over nothing. I barely touched her. Another voice mumbled something. She cut it off. "Please. She lives for attention." No knock. No one asked if I was all right. I peeled back the towel. A smear of blood mixed with pink frosting. I turned to the mirror. The cut at my hairline had started to swell. There was icing on my collar behind my ear. I reached for toilet paper and wiped it away. Slow. Careful. I saw my hand shake in the mirror just slightly. I placed it flat on the sink, pressed down until it stopped. I'd taken worse, but not from them. Not from people who said family and laughed while you bled frosting. My phone buzzed. I ignored it. Finished wiping. Breathed once, then checked. One text. No name. "Let me know when you're ready." I stared at it. I knew that number. It had been years. 5, maybe more. I hadn't deleted it, only renamed it to nothing. But it had waited, like I had. Outside, someone dropped a glass. More laughter. Then quiet, then music. The night was moving on without me. I rinsed the towel and hung it neatly on the bar. Straightened my blouse. Smoothed my sleeves. Stepped back. Looked again. There. Just below my eye. Swollen, but not enough to stop the party. Not enough to make Adrian look twice. I unlocked the door, walked into the hallway, and headed toward the dining room. Plates clinked. Cake had been served without me. I pulled out the chair closest to the wall and sat down without a word. I scrubbed the plate until the design wore thin. The message had come just after 7. "Tessa says you should clean the kitchen before you leave. No good morning. No are you okay. Just instructions passed like crumbs under a door." I didn't reply. I put on my shoes, tied my hair back, and walked straight into the kitchen. The air still smelled like sugar and wine. Crumbs littered the counter. Plates stacked high, forks sticking out like snapped branches. Someone had dumped half the cake into the sink. My cake. Adrian passed through once. I opened my mouth. He kept walking. I'm late for a meeting, he muttered, not looking up. We'll talk later. I rinsed a glass, dried it, rinsed another. Tessa sat on the couch with a throw blanket over her legs, scrolling her phone coffee untouched beside her. She didn't glance my way once. Not when I scraped frosting off the cabinet. Not when I swept the broken plate near the stove. I bent to pick it up. My breath caught. A sharp pull along my jaw. I stayed there a second longer than I should have, kneeling, waiting for the pain to settle. Then I stood, kept going. By the time I reached the counter by the fridge, the kitchen looked nearly new again. I reached for the sponge and paused. Receipts. A small stack of them beneath Adrian's mail. Cash withdrawals. Same branch, same day. Not mine. I didn't touch them. Just read the top lines once. Then I washed my hands. Dried them on my jeans. Turned off the light. Tessa still hadn't moved. I opened the back door. Stepped onto the porch. Cold air hit my face, stung the tender skin beneath my eye. I let it. I wanted it to. My bag was already packed, left by the stairs the night before. I hadn't touched it. Now I picked it up. Slid the strap over my shoulder. The keys were still in the bowl by the door. I reached for them, then paused. Let my hand drop. Let them stay. I climbed the stairs fast. Opened the door without knocking. The guest room was empty. No sheets, no lamp, no suitcase, just bare carpet and the faint square of sun where my nightstand used to be. My breath caught short. I turned around. Adrian stood at the top of the stairs holding a mug. Hey, he said, too light. We're repurposing the room. You can crash on the couch tonight, but long term, maybe it's time to look at other options. I stared at him. He kept talking. We found a place with assisted support, real quiet. You'd have your own space. And Tessa says I know what Tessa says I said. Not loud, not angry, just tired. He looked down at his coffee. I walked past him down the hall to the linen closet, grabbed the bag I'd tucked there yesterday, carried it into the living room, set it by the door. Tessa sat on the arm of the couch, sipping from her mug. We just think you'd be more comfortable with people your age, she said. Her smile was thin, polite, practiced. I bent to zip my suitcase. My hand paused halfway. I stayed like that a second longer than I needed to. Then zipped it closed. They said nothing else. I stepped outside. The cold was sharper now. Wind across my cheekbone made the skin tighten around the bruise. Across the street, Mrs. Halden stood on her porch, watering her small pine. She didn't wave, didn't smile, just looked. Not shocked, not curious, just knowing. I nodded once. She nodded back. I got in the car. Turned the key, pulled out slow. My temples pulsed. The headache had crept from dull to deep, landing behind my right eye. I pressed the heel of my hand to it, kept driving. Not home, not to the store. I turned down 8th past the gas station, past the clinic, straight toward the hospital. I didn't need to call. I'd been here before. But this time, I wasn't waiting for it to pass. I gripped the sides of the chair. Fluorescent lights hummed. Cold air slipped under the gown. Dr. Mason held the scan up to the light lips pressed tight. He didn't speak right away, just stared, then checked the screen again, then back to the film. Something in his eyes shifted. Wait here, he said. I'll be right back. He took the chart with him, closed the door soft. Too soft. I sat still, counted the seconds, looked at the wall clock. Red numbers blinked. 2 minutes, 3, 5. When he returned, his face had changed. Professional, measured. These aren't new, he said. I didn't respond. You've had prior trauma. 2 ribs healed fractures, hairline along the clavicle, 1 wrist. I kept looking at the screen. Blue bones, white lines, evidence of what I had always smoothed over. This wasn't from falling on a table, not with this angle. He paused. And we're obligated to report injuries like these. I nodded. He didn't blink. You understand what I'm saying? I nodded again. He stepped back, lowered his voice. You're not alone. We can assign someone I won't need that, I said. Calm. Even. He looked at me for a long moment, then gave a single nod. The door closed behind him. I reached for my phone, opened the messages, that number again. Let me know when you're ready. I tapped it. Hit edit contact. Typed slowly. Martin Hale. My thumb hovered. Then hit save. I stood. Changed back into my clothes. Thanked the nurse. Walked down the corridor, out through the sliding doors into the wind that caught under my collar. The parking lot was half full. My breath fogged in the air. I didn't rush. At the car, I sat with the engine off. Then finally, I called. I knocked once firm. The door opened before my knuckles left the wood. Martin Hale hadn't changed much thinner, maybe, but the same sharp eyes. No handshake, just a gesture toward the seat across from his desk. I was wondering when you'd call, he said. I sat. Didn't smile. Didn't explain. Just waited. He unlocked the drawer. Pulled out a blue folder, thick-bound at the sides, with a small clasp. Placed it in front of me without a word. His hands lingered on it a second longer than necessary. He asked me to hold it. Said you'd know when. I reached out but didn't open it. My thumb brushed the edge. Smooth. Cold. My breath eased almost unconsciously. I didn't know what he was planning, I said. Martin leaned back. He did. Not specifics, maybe, but patterns. He saw the way Adrian bent and how she watched you. I nodded once. No defense to offer. No disagreement. I opened the folder. Inside, 3 property deeds, including the house I now stood half erased in. A notarized directive signed 8 months before Harold died, language clear, firm, legal. A clause naming me sole holder, with secondary protection against coercion through family channels. Below it, transcripts. Printed. Highlighted. I recognized voices. Tessa. She's old. She doesn't even know what she has. Adrian. She'll hand it over. She always does. The date was 2 years ago. Martin spoke low. He came to me after overhearing something similar. Didn't want to frighten you. Just prepare. I didn't speak. I just stared at the paper. The names, the ink, the weight of something that had waited patiently for me to arrive. If they try to move against me now, I said slowly, does this protect the house? He gave the smallest nod. And the assets, and your account. I closed the folder, held it on my lap like something living. Outside, the streetlight flickered on. I hadn't noticed the dark settling. He didn't rush me. I stood, tucked the folder under my arm, walked to the door, turned the handle, then paused. Martin, I said, do they know this exists? Not yet, he said. I rang the doorbell once, then stepped back. Tessa opened the door with a brightness too sharp to be real. Maris. Good. We were just talking about next steps for you. She moved aside before I answered, already turning toward the kitchen. I walked in with my coat still on. Adrian leaned against the counter, arms folded, eyes unfocused. He didn't greet me, just cleared his throat. We found a place, he said. It's quiet, structured. You'll have help with everything. He gestured vaguely as if I couldn't manage a coffee mug. Tessa's voice slid in. And honestly, once she's out, everything becomes easier. For all of us. I didn't react. I just tapped my phone screen inside my pocket, felt the vibration of the recorder starting. My hand stayed steady. My jaw tightened once beneath the bruise, then held. Tessa kept talking, unaware. It's not sustainable having her pop in and out whenever she wants. She needs routine. Adrian nodded too quickly. Yeah? And with the finances getting complicated, it's just time. You know Tessa's been managing everything lately. He rubbed the back of his neck. I haven't checked the statements in months. I trust her. I let that sentence hang. Tessa shot him a look, sharp warning. He stopped talking. I stepped closer to the counter, letting their words settle into the microphone. The house smelled of lemon cleaner, but the room itself felt stale, like a place where truth had no air left. Do you understand what we're saying? Tessa asked. Yes, I said, quietly. She misread my tone as surrender. She smiled. Adrian exhaled in relief, as if a burden had been lifted off him. I buttoned my coat, picked up my bag, walked to the door without asking for help. Outside, I crossed the porch, the chill pushing through the fabric of my sleeves. I kept walking until I reached my car. I sat behind the wheel, closed the door softly, and pulled out my phone. The recording blinked back at me. Clear, crisp. Exactly what it needed to be. I forwarded the file to Martin before I even turned the key. I set the red envelope on the table. No rush, no raised voice, just paper steady in my hand, landing between the salad bowl and the wine glasses, like it belonged there all along. Tessa had just finished her speech. Words like compassion, family care, and dignity in aging still floated in the air, syrupy and rehearsed. A few neighbors clapped. Adrian smiled hollow. A photographer from the local council had snapped pictures earlier. Everyone had dressed for optics. Please read this, I said. Tessa blinked. What is it? Adrian reached for the envelope. Opened it. First the audio recording. Tessa's voice clear and sharp. Once she's out, everything becomes easier. The silence that followed said more than the words ever did. Second, the notarized deed. My name, sole ownership, undisputed. Third, a single sheet of paper, APS case number, logged, time-stamped, open for review. I stayed standing, hands clasped in front of me, my breath slow, my shoulders straight. Someone gasped. A fork clinked against a plate. Adrian stared at the papers. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Tessa turned to him, then back to me. This is... Her voice cracked. She looked around, but the room had changed. Mrs. Halden stepped forward. I've seen enough, she said softly. The bruises, the shouting, the way they sent her out the back door after parties. No one interrupted. Tessa stepped back from the table, one hand trembling. This isn't how. But no one was listening anymore. Through the front window, 2 APS officers walked toward the porch. Adrian covered his face with both hands. Tessa took a sharp breath in and froze. I didn't stay to watch. I turned, walked past the buffet table, past the coats on the rack, and stepped out into the air. The wind had picked up. I let it move through my hair, lifted my chin slightly toward the cold. The door stayed open behind me, voices muffled but rising. I didn't look back. Not once. I walked toward my car keys in hand and drove. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. Not rushed, not afraid, just final. The hallway smelled like lemon cleaner again. Someone had tried to wipe the memory clean, but it was all still there. The words, the bruises, the silence. Tessa wasn't. APS had served the notice that morning. Trespass warning, removal order. She had left in a storm of shouts, but I wasn't there for it. I didn't need to be. Adrian stood in the living room now, shoulders hunched, hands limp at his sides. Mom, he said, voice raw. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just thought I raised one hand. Not high. Just enough. He stopped talking. I walked past him, took the stairs slow. Every step familiar underfoot. Carpet worn slightly in the middle. Paint chipped on the banister. At the top, I turned left, opened the hall closet. My suitcase was still there, undisturbed. I carried it out, set it down by the bedroom door. I didn't linger. I opened drawers, folded sweaters, took only what was mine. What hadn't been purchased for appearance. What I would have chosen even if no one else ever saw it. When I finished, I stood at the top of the stairs again. My hand rested on the railing. I let it stay there for a moment longer than needed. Not grieving, just deciding. Downstairs, Adrian hadn't moved. His eyes followed me as I stepped past him, heading for the door. He didn't speak again. The alarm panel beeped softly as I opened the front door. New codes. Martin's security team had already made the changes. No one else could enter now without permission. I stepped outside. The air was sharp, dry. A bird flew low across the drive, startled by nothing. I placed the suitcase in the trunk. Shut it. Opened the driver's door. Behind me, the curtains moved. Adrian stood at the window, face pale, but I didn't look long. I got in, closed the door, turned the key. Let the engine hum beneath my hands. I boiled the water, scooped the grounds, waited. The kettle clicked. I poured slow and careful into the ceramic mug I had carried out in a grocery bag. No one had noticed it then. No one had asked why I took it. But it was mine. Always had been. The smell filled the apartment. Not strong, not sharp. Just right. I lifted the mug, watched the surface ripple once then still. My hand didn't tremble. I sat by the window. The street below was quiet. Trees' bare leaves gathered at the curb. Across the way, a woman walked a dog that didn't pull. A child rode past on a scooter, laughing into the wind. I sipped. The bruise on my cheek had faded to a soft yellow. Faint, almost gone. My breath moved easily. In, out. No weight pressing down on it. The folder lay open on the table. Blue cover worn at the edges now. Inside the last page I hadn't yet touched. Transfer instruction. Asset protection agreement. Primary residence upgrade clause. I read it twice. Then again, slower. It meant I could choose where to go next. Not where they told me to go. Not what someone else decided for me. Wherever I wanted. Fully protected. I left the folder open. No need to close it anymore. I stood. Unlatched the window. Let the breeze move through the room. It lifted the corner of the folder. Stirred the curtain. Brushed across my sleeve like something familiar. I didn't stop it. I leaned on the frame, coffee in hand, watching the street without urgency. No one needed anything from me. No one was waiting. No one watching for weakness. Only the wind came in. And I let it.